Hello. Hello. Can anyone around here speak basketball?
Taking Bobby Webster.
This is Adam Silver.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Confederacy of Dunks
Basketball Podcast.
I am your host, Freddie Rivas, and who, sir, looking good in your Raptors cap are you?
It's me, Matt, your producer. How you
Oh.
doing, Fred?
I'm good. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's an appropriate response to the way I throw to you because, yeah, I certainly know who you are. But you doing good? You enjoying the summer?
Oh, I'm having a great time. I'm in the midst of allergy season, so I'm a little loopy right now with the reactant and whatnot. But that's the price you pay.
That is the price you pay, and I will
Living.
for living, being in pain. I will take Loopy Matt whenever I can get him.
Fantastic.
If it's your first time in the podcast, we're Raptors / NBA pod. We're with Raptors Republic. Lots of fun stuff to get to. We're gonna be draft focused today. Let's go to you first, Matt. And I'll try to make sure to call you McCready since we got Matt Duncan. I mean, a lot's happened in Raptors land in a short period, but I sort of want to focus on the draft specifically. The Raptors did just sign someone to an exhibit, whatever 10-day contract thing, but that seems like it's more of a camp deal. So we'll, I don't think we need to talk about that yet, but I want you to grade the Raptors pick at 13. We took Gradey-ing. We also took Marquise Noel, undrafted. We signed him, or we're about to sign him. So just sort of grade that for me, and then tell me how you think these two figure or don't figure into the Raptors rotation.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the draft's always such kind of a crapshoot, like if Gradey-ing has a gigantic knee injury tomorrow, then like it's a terrible pick forever.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to happen. So I'm just going to give it an A. Why not give it an A?
Sure.
They grabbed a guy who I think a lot of people had a little bit higher on their boards. They had a guy that for sure has a skill that will translate at an elite level, which is something that you can't usually say about a 13th pick. It's something that you can 100% confidently say about Kobe Buffkin, another guy who is like going in that range. You'd say he's more well-rounded, but he didn't do anything at an elite level. So I think it's a pretty nice pick. I think I said this to you maybe, Freddie, but like looking back at the Suns' drafting, they're always viewed as such draft geniuses, and they drafted Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, and Cam Johnson. Just the three best shooters who were available when their pick came around. And when they drafted badly, they passed up Halliburton for Jason Smith, and they drafted DeAndre Ayton in front of, Luka Doncic and Bagley. They passed on Bagley.
Big mistake.
Big bag of mistakes. Get the bag hutch out. We've got some mistakes to fill. Very niche Mr. Show reference for those who love that show. I don't know. I think they did pretty all right. Where they're going to fit, Gradey-ing's 19 years old. He's probably not going to be very good in his first year. He'll probably be able to space the floor on the second unit. If they play him a lot, it means that they're going for some sort of development plan, but that will probably come at the cost of a win here and there, which was definitely not the mantra any of the last 3 years. I'm blanking on his name, the guard that they
Marquise Noel.
Noel. Yeah, he's going to be the shortest player in the NBA, and he could just be a guy that they send down to the 905 to like make sure everyone gets the ball where they need to get it. Good culture guy, a winner. Do I expect him to be make a difference this year? I would be very surprised, but he's also the type of player that if he does make a difference, it's going to be an amazing story because he's going to be such a weird, odd player. I'd have a little bit more faith with him if he was like an elite shooter. He shot like 35% from three, which is like fine-ish, but if you're 23 and a half years old playing in the NCAA, you hope to be dominating, and he averaged field goal percentage is below 40. Anyway, feel all right about it.
Cool. Yeah, I would say I agree like 1,000% there. Like Noel, I feel like you don't want to doubt someone who's sort of like defied that doubt already, but size is a pretty big deal in the league, and I think the difference between college or NCAA rather, and the NBA is gigantic, right? Like, even from a shooting perspective, you've seen guys like, Jimmer or whomever kind of come in and just the other level, the next level of speed or strength or what have you, is kind of like devastating. Or, Toronto's had Matt Thomas or what have you. A difference with a guy like Gradey is, he is like whatever 6'6", 6'8" in shoes. And I think, there's a big difference between that and, being 6'4", 6'3", 6'5".
Oh, Matt Thomas's release was super slow too. Like by like a gunner standard, like Dick gets his shot off so quickly, comes off of screens so well. Like he's going to add an extra element to the offense that they haven't had since Danny Green maybe a guy.
I think Danny Green's a really, really good comparison actually for
on
Raptors
offense.
Fans. Yeah, he won't be Danny. He won't be any. I mean, he's projected to never be anywhere close to Danny Green on defense.
No. Do you mind if I ask you a question, Freddie? Is that cool?
Please, yeah.
What? I'll throw out some, and John, you can hit up this too. But like, out of the elements of Grady Dick's defense, what are you most worried about? Like foot speed, or just physical, like strength? Like, what's more worrisome to you?
I think for me it would definitely be the speed of the game, because I think sometimes he had difficulty staying in front of people. So I think speed of the game is definitely something that I'm more concerned about of anything else.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think speed's a good answer. I was going to say strength just because, and I got to stop doing this, but I keep imagining like the average sort of draft guy going up against OG. And I think about him trying to guard OG in like any capacity and just like getting absolutely bullied and dominated. But OG is one of the stronger players in the league.
You want to feel even worse comparison? Imagine him trying to guard Jimmy Butler down the stretch of the game.
Yeah, and and to your point, that's where sort of like he comes in off the bench and hits some threes and spreads the offense and that sort of thing, and isn't exploited as much. But I don't want to suck up all the air here. Where are you at, John, as far as the draft picks or the draft pick and the signing and how they'll fit into the team?
I've just learned to pretty much, I think we've touched on even in past podcasts that we've done together, I think I've just learned to trust in the front office and just the scouting department, everything, because they found some really nice gems, and we were in a spot where, as the draft kept, as the picks kept coming off the board, we were in a spot where we were assured to get a good shooter, right? I'm obviously, kind of different in terms of the mold of, we didn't get like a project guy, right? Like we needed shooting, and the Raptors were in a position where they were going to get a good shooter. And for me, I was okay with Grady Dick. I was okay with even Jordan Hawkins, right? Jordan Hawkins was a guy who really, elevated his play, and he proved to be a quality shooter. But I really like the fact that Grady Dick he didn't have that onus on him offensively to kind of be the guy, right? I mean, he had another guy in Jalen Wilson who who had ball handling duties as well. He was the main scorer there. So watching Grady Dick do what he did over at Kansas, I was really impressed with him, and he could shoot, off of screens, but I thought he might have just been as good of a shooter with off the dribble as well. I think that's really going to help the Raptors as well. We need shooting bad. I'm really happy with this pick. I'm just hoping that defensively he gets better. I'm hoping that his surroundings and the quality of defenders that we have on the roster, he's going to help. But I think we just need shooting, and can't really knock the pick. I think we address the need, and I'm hoping that he can prove that he's an NBA caliber player and he can eventually, insert himself as a starter. As far as Marquise Noel, he was arguably the best player in that NCAA tournament. He had a really, really strong run. Obviously, size is a big factor, but we took a chance on Fred and he panned out. Like, the fact is, he's got the intangibles, right? He's a true gamer. Really, really, like I said, really strong tournament. Shooting is going to be a concern, but he's got a really strong feel for the game. He can get his teammates involved, and I think the Raptors are just going to take a shot on a guy who spent 5 years in college and are hoping that he can eventually translate to being a floor general at the NBA level. Now, whether it's a second unit guy or a starter, we'll have to see, but definitely the size is a concern, but I really love the fact that we took a shot with him.
Yeah, I mean, I think for recent reference, if anyone knows Facundo Campazzo's game, obviously he was like much older and played overseas for a long time, but and he might have been a bit taller than Noel, but he was able to,
which is crazy to say about anybody.
I know, yeah, it's wild, but yeah, he was able to sort of impact the game as far as like almost like a knuckleball or like a bit of like a change up scenario. Let me just sort of follow up, John, with another question, and Matt or McCready. McCready, I know you saw my brain freeze there. Answer after this. So based on sort of like, this is the Raptors' third. This is Masai and Bobby. It's their third highest pick. What do you think is like a fair expectation? And maybe you've already answered that with the kind of the second unit shooting stuff. But as far as like if you could just take a guess, like 5 years out, right? So we got Barnes, who's obviously very early in his career, 4th overall, and Pirtle, who I believe was 9th overall. And this is, the 13th overall pick. And because other than that, it's sort of been like 4 and 9. And then all Masai and Bobby's picks have been 20 and up.
I think they had 20 twice, right? With Bruno and DeLon, right?
That's right. Yeah. So John, you first, what do you think sort of like is a fair expectation for this guy? I mean, like, maybe he fell, right? But even still, right, he was drafted at 13. A certain amount of teams did pass on him.
Well, I think a fair expectation would be that he ends up being a really good shooter at the NBA level for a really long time. But I think that the Raptors are kind of hoping that they could develop him into a more, well-rounded offensive player. And I think he's got the tools to show it. It's really hard, like I say, at the college level to kind of show off all your tools because of certain guys coming back. And you see the improvement of so many players. Like, I keep referring to Devin Booker. I'm not saying he's going to be Devin Booker, but he was so sheltered over in Kentucky. He just wasn't able to kind of develop. He was pretty much a catch and shoot player over there in Kentucky. And he developed into, a dominant ball handling guard, and he's a superstar player. I'm not saying Gradey-Dick's going to be at that level, but I think at worst, you're just going to get a really quality shooter at the C because he's shown he can do it in 1 year in college. I think the hope for the Raptors is that he becomes a starter in this league for them for a long time and a pretty well-rounded offensive player.
Cool. So if you're hearing that, fans, John Rallis said that this guy's easily going to be as good as Booker.
Ooh.
Yeah. So Booker
aggregated.
Booker dropped 72 in a game. This guy's going to drop 144. Matt McCready. I'm just kidding. McCready. Well, like what's your sort of kind of fair expectation career-wise for this guy? Obviously, it's just a guess, but
yeah, I mean, it's a guess for sure. Keandre Ashley from Hoop Intellect had a really nice comparison of him to Cam Johnson, and that seems like pretty apt. I think like Dick's just a little bit more athletic than a lot of the guys that he gets compared to. A little bit. I didn't see Jason Capono doing a backflip and landing on his anything but his neck, I suppose, if he were ever try something like that. So I don't know. I think like, if he makes an all-star team, I'll be a little surprised, but like, well above average shooter or like a starter seems like a pretty decent projection of where he's going to go. He's not like it's not like you're taking like Koulibaly or something where it's like, if this guy hits, it's a fucking slam dunk. Sorry for swearing. If he hits really hard, he'll probably be pretty good.
Yeah, well said. Okay, last question. John, I'm going to go to you here, and just take this in whatever direction you like. I think no, I'll weigh in afterwards, but the draft is over. It's sort of like a season in the NBA. And what are your sort of big takeaways that are like either draft influenced heading into the summer or just about the draft? Like, what's your feeling now that this draft has come and gone?
Well, I think there's decision making now for like a few teams, and I think speaking of Scoot Henderson, he was drafted with the third overall pick in Portland, and it's like what happens with Dame in
Mhm.
Portland now, right? Like I love the fact that they got a pick, but I mean there's still a lot of he can help them win now because he would probably be a number one pick in any other draft if he wasn't in the same draft as Wembanyama, who's a generational talent. But I think the biggest takeaway going to the summer that's draft related is what happens with Dame, right? I mean
Yeah.
he wants a competitive roster, but is that going to kind of to contend? And I get that, but is that going to handcuff what Portland wants to do in their future, right? Like maybe they want to go in a different. His decision making. I mean, he's been so loyal to the franchise, but his decision making and wanting a competitive roster could end up screwing the team long term. So I think that's a really big thing to kind of see what direction they're going to go to, because I think it's going to impact a lot of decision, and it's going to impact even the role that Scoot has going forward.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. That's, I think, that's the next big sort of summer thing, right? Is Dame. And, I've said this like online before, but I really think a big part, even from a Raptors perspective, but not just Raptors, like the rest of the league. I think a lot of the rumors we were reading were from Portland. I think that Portland really wanted to sort of either get a deal done before the draft, like moving Scoot, or they wanted to move Dame before the draft. And I think a lot of those rumors were sort of like it's either them sort of sussing out the market. I think Dame has now mentioned Miami a couple times publicly. And he doesn't seem like a guy who's going to sort of like sit out and cause trouble, that sort of thing. But I'm really curious about their leverage and sort of if they feel like they have less now or more. Regardless, even if I think they decide to, keep Dame and Scoot together, like, hey, what if that works out really well? What if Dame, he's 33 years, he's turning 33 this year. What if sort of he gets to like rest a bit more and Scoot can kind of carry the load for him, or I don't know. Yeah, it's I think Portland is probably the biggest team to watch. Not the only team to watch, obviously, but he's the biggest name out there easily as far as like who may go or whatever. Because it does seem like at this point that like they've drafted Scoot. I don't think he'll be.
You're speaking about like Dame though, and it's interesting because like I said, he's given everything to that franchise, and it's kind of funny because at what point though do you start to, question what he's doing in terms of like he was kind of saying, I want to wait to see what Portland does in their free agent acquisitions or what they do in the early parts of free agency, kind of before I make my decision. At what point does that become a little bit selfish in the sense that what happens if Portland makes a few moves that they feel like could improve the roster, but Dame still doesn't feel like it's good enough, and then they end up trading. He wants to leave in a trade, and it's like you're stuck with some of these contracts or decisions that you made thinking that this might help Dame, but it's not. Isn't it almost better to just kind of give them a direction, a concrete answer as to yes or no right now?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm not in the rooms, but I think it's fascinating because like I think how much is it, and how much is it sort of media driven, right? Like I think we love to talk about which big player is going to be removed from blank small market. That's like one of the like sort of NBA things that is just on repeat, right? Whether it's Beal or Anthony Davis or Paul George in Indiana, et cetera, et cetera. Like it just sort of that's a recycling thing, right? Like we love that. And Dame has been pretty consistent about wanting to stay in Portland, but I mean everyone has a breaking point. And it's an interesting point too, right? Like lack of clarity, like is that hurting or helping? McCready, why don't you just weigh in on the Dame stuff and then answer the question of a sort of like what was your big draft takeaway?
Great. I'm here to weigh, baby. Here we go. Weigh
Woo!
time.
It's weighing in.
Yeah, I'm weighing in, and it comes up heavy. I feel like the Trailblazers should probably deal Dame. I don't think this is like the hottest take in the world. You have Sharp, you have Scoot. You already have like two fucking really nice pieces to start a rebuild. You know, you could get a boatload for Dame, and Dame's at the age where if he has like an injury, like that contract's an albatross. Like. You know, like sure, Dame, they could compete with Dame this year, but like Dame had a really good season last year, and like there's no true reason to think that he's not going to this year, other than the fact that he's had a lot of injuries and he's getting to the age now where people tend to regress. He's also pretty small for a player. So if you were able to get like, you know, a Donovan Mitchell style package for Dame, I think like you kind of just have to go for it. I mean, otherwise, it's like, I don't know, man. Try to deal Simons and Nurkic and what's his name, Nasir Little to Toronto. Throw Scoot in there and try to get OG and Pascal, you know. Toronto gets, you know, Simons to put with Grady Dick, and you got Scoot and you got Scotty, and that seems like a pretty good young core with some shooting and some playmaking. And then Portland would have, you know, a lineup with a lot. If they bring back Jeremy Grant, a giant lineup to put around Dame, and you could find a center somewhere. But yeah, all around the league, it just seems like the CBA hasn't come out yet. Really, it feels like people don't quite know what's going on. So it almost seemed like there was a state of inertia in the draft to a certain extent. There were so few trades compared to usual. That you would see in a draft that like I feel like people don't quite know what to do and don't want to make a giant decision that ends up looking terrible in a week.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And you know, I was just listening to Beck and Lowe, and they because I was thinking, I was like I guess it was like on the tip of my brain, but it is weird that you have all these new CBA things that are kind of coming into effect, and also there's a pretty giant the cap has risen by quite a bit in a single year, so it makes you wonder what teams are sort of willing to do in terms of the short term versus long term. Yeah, it should, and you know, I do think that like there was a lack of like big trades, but it does seem like the Wizards used the draft pretty, or not necessarily, but like the timing of the draft to be pretty aggressive with a lot of their moves. But I guess it wasn't on draft day.
Well, they did the Bilal trade on draft day,
right? But yeah, I guess like the Beal and Porzingis trade sort of came the week of, but
hey, they were proactive. They had a vision of what they wanted to do, and they went out and did it. And I think they did all right, considering Beal had a no trade contract like clause in his contract. Like, what the hell can you even do in that situation?
Yeah, I think I was like pretty judgmental of what they got for Beal, but I think it is a very, very key and important reminder that they had a no trade clause, because that just really sort of is just wildly prohibitive. And it's different than a player like, say, Pascal being like, I won't resign with Atlanta or what have you. Like, that's a different type of prohibitive, because I think, you know, it's sort of like someone can drop a gavel on a scenario. Like, they're not going to say like, oh, I will, you know, I won't do this. You know, when Atlanta could be like, oh, well, if we get him, you know, he'll probably resign.
How close do you think the Raptors were to a trade with Pascal releasing that statement of I won't resign anywhere? Like, what's your take on that?
I think they haven't been close at all to trading Pascal. I think that one thing I heard from Jake Fisher was that a lot of the NBA has been frustrated because they feel like the Raptors are just using their conversations to kind of like mine value on their players. So I think Pascal's probably been talked about in that way. Whereas I think that, you know, going forward with all this cap stuff, I do sort of think that they would be a lot more serious about trading OG, and are probably trying to sort of like find that weak point, find that team that is more desperate than Portland or what. I think they would have done Scoot for OG for sure. But
I hope so.
Yeah, me too. Right. But yeah, I think, you know, as opposed to sort of a Gary Trent or whatever, I think OG will. I think the market won't like there's no, the idea of OG opting in is absurd. And I think for Gary, it wasn't really. But yeah, I think OG, and his management probably think they can get upwards of $30 million. So, um, yeah, John, what about you? Like, how close do you think the Raptors were to making a deal?
I think it's interesting because like you always hear that they don't want to leak, but it was probably coming from the other parties. I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't think they were ever close because I think their asking price was just too high. Personally, like I
Mhm.
just don't think they were maybe in talking stages, but I don't think that Masai had any serious, aspirations of dealing anybody. I think that he's really maybe sold that this roster can, or the foundation of it can maybe have some success, and maybe just wants to see how a new coach can kind of handle this group first. But I
Mhm.
don't think there was anything, to be honest. I don't think there was anything too serious in the works, just because of the asking price.
Yeah, and I think their history too, right? Like I feel like that's sort of they've been either like reluctant to be proactive or asking prices too big, sort of thing, overvaluing their players. Which I think there's examples that are good and bad. I just want to add though that my takeaway from this draft, and this is something I'm so obsessed with. I just love it. I love the idea of players getting drafted high that are not from the NCAA. So out of the top 5 picks, one player played for the NCAA. And I think we will see. This is a big audition for the overtime elite. If the Thompson brothers are bad, I think that it probably set that league back pretty far. And I think G League, is sort of good, like with Kuminga and Green, we'll see as well. But I also think for Metropolitan 92, because there has been some talk about part of the reason Victor went, he played in the EuroLeague and then he went down to this team is part of it's like they're sort of positioning themselves as like a potential sort of like NBA factory. And I think with Koulibaly, that could be really. I mean, Victor's going to pan out, but if Koulibaly does as well, how many players in Europe are going to be like, okay, here's what you do: you go play for this French team for a year, then you go to the NBA. Whereas you had the like traditionally you have a guy like Doncic who played in the EuroLeague, and gets drafted. But anyways, yeah. So I love these other routes into the NBA. I find it so fascinating. But yeah, I guess.
Hey, we had the Australian League a few years ago with Giddy, and Lamelo.
Yeah, they've been Australia. I feel like has been like I always hear that the Australian League's one of the better leagues in the world. But yeah, I guess I didn't get any guys in this year.
There was that Ryan Rupert guy who went in the second round, who was like the last guy who was on the floor, who got the introduction. He was the last pick. So.
Oh,
cool. He was picked like 44th or something, but he was the last guy who had like the big intro of the suit and was like there on the floor. So
yeah, and the NZ Breakers.
Yeah.
Cool. And also, yeah, even in the second round, a lot of G Leaguers, or like G League Ignite guys. But yeah, that does it for the pod. We'll wrap up before an hour here. Bring Matty D in, but let me go to you, John. What's something you want to plug? What do you want to tell the people?
Just always just happy to be here back on the pod, obviously. And yeah, if you're ever in the area in Bathurst and Bloor, always come down and check out George's Deli and Barbecue. It's always great homemade burgers, good chicken. My family's been running that mom and pop shop for 27 years now, going on 28. So they work hard, and yeah, I love when it just come by and chat. I'm not as there as I used to be, but that's how Freddie and I obviously met. Just when he was working at the Bloor Cinema, we'd always come in order and we talk hoops, and here we are. So yeah, just come down for some great food and yeah, mention my name, mention this podcast, and my parents will be happy to know that I brought some customers off basketball podcast.
Yeah, best place ever. McCready, what's up? What do you got going on?
Oh, thank you for asking. So excited to share this big news with you. I should have shared it off the top, but decided to relate until the very end of the podcast.
Oh, wow.
Something going on at Bathurst and Bloorish area as well.
Oh.
I will be the head bartender at the Fringe tent this summer.
Oh, nice.
And I know people were really bummed when Honest Ed's moved, and that whole area was taken out and was moved to a skating rink inside of a park. But we have a brand new location. We're actually in the sewer system underneath Bathurst and Bloor. We have an amazing apricot beer that you can try. You have to answer a couple riddles in order to get into the Fringe tent. But if you hit up my Twitter, there's clues. You have to go back a few years, but there's clues if you want to figure out how to get there. It's $66 for admission, but you get a drink ticket for whatever you want except for alcoholic beverages.
Amazing. That sounds like a deal. Get yourself in the sewer, have an apricot beer, and get your riddle brain going. McCready, thank you so much. Maddie D, what do you want to let the people know, before we head out?
Right. Yeah. Go over to raptorsrepublic.com. That's where you can see all of our episodes. You can also see all the great articles and stuff that are written there. And if you like what you saw on the YouTube, the clips that we put up there, we've got a whole full episode that you can listen to on your favorite podcatcher. Go to whatever one it is. Now, I just got word today that Stitcher is shutting down. So if you're a Stitcher person, you're going to have to find a new podcatcher. I'm sorry about that, but it just happens sometimes, folks. And
a little bit of business news here at the end.
Player FM would never. Let me just say.
Yeah, Player FM still going strong.
Better believe it.
There is a paywall that you can support independent journalism with. It's $6 a month over there. These guys write these fantastic articles, and like I said last week,
change the clock tower.
Right, that reference.
Yeah, you wanted me to get a soundbite for it. Support it so that this thing can keep going and we can keep going as well. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Amazing. Thanks, everybody. Maddie, if you feel like we're done and we're good to go, please just give me those words I love so much. Okay.
Listen to full episodes of the Confederacy of Dunks only on the Rapcast.